NFL fans, welcome back to the J All Day Sports Show. In today's episode, we're talking about the NFC East. I'm going to do record predictions for all four of these teams. I'm going to give you my realistic prediction and then kind of like a floor of like if the wheels fall off for each one of these teams, where I think the floor is, and then maybe a best case scenario if everything falls exactly into place. All right. Let's get into it. All right, my NFL degenerates. Let's start off with the Dallas Cowboys, guys. I think they're a 10-win team. Could they win 12 games if everything falls into place? Sure. But I think they're a 10-win team. Let's go through this 18-week schedule and tell you where I think they win, where I think they lose, and potential like games that are like 50-50. I think they could be a 10-7 team. But I also think if the wheels fall off, this offensive line doesn't play well, there's an injury somewhere, there's not a lot of depth, especially at the running back and wide receiver positions, they could be a 7-10 team. That's my floor for the Cowboys this year. Let's talk about a realistic kind of best case scenario for the Cowboys. I think week one's a 60-40 game that they're going to lose. I think the Cleveland Browns, that D-line is just too good. I think they lose that game. I think they're well coached. Their head coach has been coach of the year 2 of the last 4 years. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Njoku. And that D-line, Myles Garrett. Who's blocking Myles Garrett on the Cowboys offensive line? Not no one. I think they lose that game. I think week 2 they get back on track. They're at home against the New Orleans Saints. They're really good at Jerry's World, and the Saints aren't very good. That offensive line, not great for the Saints. The defense is maybe slightly above average. But Olave can't do it all by himself on offense. I think Derek Carr, the Cowboys' defense is still really good. I think Derek Carr is going to be not good because he's Derek Carr. I think they win that game. Then they play the Ravens at home. Luckily, could they win that game? I don't see it happening. By week 3, I think the Ravens are going to start to be a well-oiled machine. The new defensive coordinator is going to get a grasp of, I think, one of the best defenses in the NFL. I think they lose that game. And then they have a nice stretch. I think they beat the Giants. The Giants, I just don't think are very good. Neighbors is good, but I don't know what Daniel Jones is going to show up. He'll probably be hurt by week 4. He's always hurt. I don't want him to get hurt because I think a couple years ago he played pretty damn well. We'll see how Malik Neighbors fits in there. Their cornerbacks are trash. D-line has improved for the Giants, though. So we'll see how that D-line goes up against the Cowboys' offensive line. Then we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think they win that game. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, the quarterback situation is a disaster. Fields and Russell Wilson are both cheeks. The defense is pretty good. Highsmith and TJ Watt could wreak havoc on Dak, and, they could potentially lose to Pittsburgh, but I think they're going to win that game in this little mock-up I'm doing. Next, they got the Lions. I have a loss there. Then they have the bye. Coming out, they got San Francisco. I think they lose that game too. And then week 9, this is a coin flip game. But in this, I'm going to say that they win this game against the Falcons. The Falcons are pretty good. They lost this game, I wouldn't be surprised. But for what we're doing, this exercise right now, I think they win this game. A close game. But they're on the road. So they could lose this game, but maybe they win it. I think they win it. Then they got the Eagles in week 10. I'm going them beating the Eagles at home. We're going to split with the Birds this year. The loss to the Texans. They beat the Commanders. They go on a nice little stretch here. They got wins against the Commanders, the Giants, the Bengals, and the Panthers. That takes us to week 16, which is a loss. Week 17 to the Eagles is a loss. I think they split with the Birds. And week 18 is a win. That makes the Cowboys 10-7, guys. And then if they lose those games in week 4 and 5, if they split with the Giants and then lose to Pittsburgh, and then week 9 they lose to the Falcons, they're 7-10, guys. They could very well be 7-10. If they split with anyone in the division and they lose to the Falcons, that's still only 8 wins. I think they go 10-7, but Floor for the Cowboys, we're going 7-10. All right, next up, let's talk about the New York Football Giants. It's going to be a tough year for Giants fans. I like what they did with the help to the defensive line, bringing in Brian Burns to pair with Dexter Lawrence. I think that helps. But their cornerbacks are still trash. The offensive line is okay. They brought in Runyon. We'll have to see. Daniel Jones, he looked horrible in that preseason game. Then he started playing a little bit better as the game went on. But I don't know. Where do we find wins? I think best case scenario is 6-11 for the New York Giants. I think that's best case scenario if everything kind of goes well. Realistic, I think they're a 4 or 5 win team, guys. I'm going to go 4-13. I think that they really need to come out strong. If they can beat the Vikings week 1, maybe they win 6 or 7 games at the most. But I think they lose. The Vikings are a better team. They got a better defense. Their offense is better. They should win that game. But it's week 1. Sam Darnold is not great. And Washington looks pretty good. Jaden Daniels looks tough. He's going to be tough to handle, man. I think they lose that game too. On the road at Washington, I think they lose. Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson is now a Philadelphia Eagle, but I like Cliff Kingsbury, what he's going to do with that offense, and Jaden Daniels. I like Dan Quinn defensively. They could lose that game. In week 3, they're going to lose to Cleveland. They're going to lose to the Cowboys. And in my best case scenario, they split with the Cowboys, so that could potentially be a win there. But because the Cowboys are not as good on the road. If they're going to beat the Cowboys, it's going to be at home. I got a loss to the Seahawks. I do have a weird win, a funky win at home against the Bengals. A loss to the Eagles, but this could be a split in the best case scenario. They could lose or win this game. The Eagles should beat them twice. But if they split, then they get to the 6 wins. If they lose, 4-13. I got a loss to Pittsburgh. Week 9, I have a win, them splitting with Washington, winning the home game. Beating Carolina, they got a bye week 11. Tampa Bay is a loss. I think their defense is too good. And Daniel Jones, do you think he makes it to week 12? I don't know. Then I got another loss to the Cowboys. I have them beating the Saints at home. I'm not a fan of the Saints, and the Saints are a lot worse. Derek Carr is horrible when he's not in the dome. I think they could potentially win this game. And then it's tough sledding, man. Loss to the Ravens. Loss to the Falcons. Loss to the Colts. Loss to the Eagles. 4-13, Giants fans. Best case scenario, they get a win in week 7 against the Eagles. They get another win somewhere like week 4-ish against the Cowboys. Maybe another win sprinkled in. You go 6-11. That's best case scenario. Now let's talk about these Washington Commanders. I think they're a little bit better than the Giants. I'm going 6-11 for the Washington Commanders. Let's see how we get there. I think realistic is 6-11. In the best case scenario, they win some of these close games and Jaden Daniels balls out. Maybe they win 7 or 8 games. I don't think that's going to happen, especially with this defense. But Jaden Daniels is a winner. And him and Terry McLaurin and him running that read option can give teams a lot of trouble, right? They brought in Austin Eckler. They could win some close games. I think they lose to Tampa Bay. They beat the Giants week 2. They lose to Cincinnati. Beat Arizona. Lose to Cleveland. Lose. They have a tough schedule too. Lose to Baltimore. Then they beat Carolina, which is a very beatable team. Especially at home. I think they could win that game. And then where are we at? We're at week 8. They're probably going to lose to Chicago, but you never know. Probably lose that game. I had the next week 9 a loss to the Giants, so we split with the Giants. And then you know what? I'm saying they beat the Steelers. I think the Steelers are going to underachieve this year. That's my wild card win in the best case scenarios. Them winning at home against Pittsburgh. Lost to the Eagles. Lost to the Cowboys. If they split with the Cowboys 1-1, that could potentially be a win. And then the next week, the Titans. The Titans aren't very good. That's a very winnable game, especially at home. So in the best case scenario, we have them winning some of these home games. They got a bye in week 14. I got a win over New Orleans. lost to the Eagles, lost to Atlanta, lost to Dallas. So that brings them in with some of those wins at 8-9. Best case scenario, if they win those extra games that I was talking about in like week 12 and week 16. But realistically, I'm going 6-11. I think they probably lose in week 12 to Dallas. They probably lose in week 16 to the Eagles. But division games are tough. They can win some division games and have a surprise home win like against Pittsburgh. They can win 7-8 games. But realistically, I think they go 6-11. That's good enough for third place in the NFC East. All right, and finally, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. My first prediction, I had them 11-6. With Jahad Dotson, it's a great addition to the offense. I'm going 12-5 this year for the Birds. I think they can be 12-5 or 11-6. That's where I'm going realistically. If the wheels kind of fall off and this defense sucks, they're going to win 9 games. They're going to be a 9-8, 8-9 team if shit goes sour. But I think they lose opening week to Green Bay. This is another team. If they end up winning that game, the Eagles can go on a tear the first 7-8 weeks of the season. Then we got week 2. We got the Atlanta Falcons. We got the Atlanta Falcons week 2, which is a very winnable game. Then we got the Saints, another winnable game. I think the Eagles beat the Falcons at home. And the Saints just aren't very good. I like them to win that game. Then week 4, I think it's a loss to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has their number. Then we have the bye already week 5. Week 6, at home versus Cleveland. It's going to be a tough game. But I'm going to go win here in the best case scenario. Then 7, they're going to beat the Giants. 8, they can beat Cincinnati. They can beat the Jaguars. But weeks 8 and 9, they could lose both of those games to the Bengals and the Jaguars and go to that 9-8 record. But I think they win those games. We had a loss to the Cowboys in week 10, a win in week 11 over Washington. Then they're going to lose to the Rams. Their luck's going to run out in LA sooner or later. I think the last few times the Eagles traveled to LA, they won. I think they're going to lose that game. Then another loss, back-to-back games on the road versus LA and the Rams. Tough stretch, guys. That's a tough stretch. Then we go on a tear. The Birds go on a tear. Win beating Carolina. Win beating Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's going to be in shambles by the end of the year, injury-wise, quarterback-wise. Then we get another win at Washington. We beat the Cowboys at home and beat the Giants at home. That gets us to 12-5. 9-8 is the worst case scenario for the Eagles. Best case scenario, 12-5. All right, NFL fans, thank you so much for tuning into this video. We really, really appreciate you guys. If you like this kind of division content, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I want to know in the comments, what are your predictions for each one of these teams' record? I'm going Eagles 12-5, Cowboys 10-7, Washington is 6-11, and the Giants come in last place at 4-13 and disappoint. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace!